Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and don't forget to click the notification bell. Thank you. Today, we are going to uncover a historical mystery, the genius composer Mozart and the mystery of his Requiem in D minor. December the 5th of May seemed like just another ordinary day in the minds of many, even though the Moon Agreement was signed by the United Nations on this date. For most people, it might not hold much significance. However, what I want to talk about today is something many of you are familiar with, the Austrian composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who passed away 229 years ago, and his unfinished work, the Requiem in D minor, KV 626. We all know he was a genius composer, but very few people know what the name Amadeus actually means. This name comes from the Latin combination of the words amare, to love, and deus, God. When translated, it means beloved by God. In Christian theology, it can be interpreted as God's gift, one who loves God, or the one loved by God. In English, Amadeus would be understood as God's beloved. No matter how you look at it, the priest who named him truly had great foresight. If Mozart's talent wasn't favored by God, it's hard to find another explanation. I'm sure everyone is familiar with his life, so let me start by talking about one of his works, The Abduction from the Seraglio. This early work by Mozart is widely regarded as one of his most lively operas, and I personally enjoy it a lot, especially the 2003 live version conducted by Cornelius in Zurich Opera House. If you like, you can try listening to it. When Mozart composed this opera, he had just been freed from his previous employment under the Archbishop of Salzburg after the success of his previous opera, Idomeneo, Re die Creta, in Munich. He moved to Vienna, the city of music, with the aim of showcasing his talents to the world. With the help of the director of the German-language theatre, Gottlieb Steffani, he received a German libretto, but it was delayed and couldn't be performed in time for the visit of Tsar Paul I of Russia. The opera finally premiered on July 16 of the following year. During the composition of this work, Mozart's emotional state could only be described as turbulent. How should we put it? If we look at the letter Mozart wrote to his father, the composer Leopold Mozart, we can catch a glimpse of his state of mind. And I must say, in an opera, the poetry must be the obedient daughter of music. Bei einer Oper muss schlechterdings die Poesie der Musik gehorsame Tochter sein. Why is Italian opera so popular, even though the plot is often so terrible? Because music is everything, and when you listen carefully, you forget everything else. Only the plot and the lyrics exist for the sake of the music, and when they are not forced onto the wretched staff, only then can one consider the opera successful. The perfect situation is when a great composer, capable of understanding stage performance and offering reasonable opinions, meets a competent librettist. Then it is like encountering the rebirth of the phoenix. In such a case, I will not fear any applause, even if it comes from ignorance. The story of the abduction from the Seraglio is roughly about the Spanish nobleman Belmont, who, with the help of his servant Pedrillo, travels to the Turkish harem of Selim Pasha to rescue his lover Constanze and her maid Blonde, who had been kidnapped by pirates. But if we examine it closely, the plot undoubtedly mirrors Mozart's own experiences with love. For instance, when he was a child, he boldly climbed onto the lap of the Austrian empress and kissed her face repeatedly. At the age of 6, after performing for the empress, when she asked him what reward he wanted, Mozart responded that he hoped to kiss the youngest daughter of the empress at a wedding, which made everyone laugh heartily. Do you know who that beautiful little princess was? She later married into France and became the last queen of France, Marie Antoinette. Young Mozart even innocently confessed to her, "You're so beautiful. When I grow up, I will marry you." If he wasn't divinely chosen, how could he have dared to be so bold? As he grew older, at the age of 21, Mozart fell in love with his beautiful cousin Maria Anna Mozart in Augsburg, Germany. Her intelligence, cheerfulness, and lively personality deeply attracted him. Unfortunately, when his father found out, he opposed their relationship, fearing that she might hinder Mozart's artistic development. This made Mozart, who had always respected his father, write the following letter: "Your treatment of the pure, happy relationship between me and my cousin has truly disappointed me. If you bring it up again in the future, I have the right to remain silent." Despite all of this, in the same year, Mozart fell in love with another woman. This declaration, which may now seem like a fleeting moment, was actually deeply significant to Miss Maria, who valued it greatly. In fact, she never married and remained single until her death at the age of 84. Was it that she loved the wrong person? Who did Mozart fall in love with? While traveling to Paris with his mother Anna, they passed through Mannheim in Germany, where Mozart met the court musician Franz Weber and his second daughter, Alo Iser Weber, who was a rising star in the opera world. Yes, once again, Mozart was captivated by her beautiful voice, and they had a brief but lovely romance in Mannheim. What happened next? During one of his journeys back home, Mozart coincidentally met Alo Iser again and, playfully, began singing at the piano, "Oh, those who don't want me, come lick my boots." This frightened Alo Iser so much that she decided to end their relationship right then and there. However, the connection with the Weber family was far from over. Mozart's next romantic interest was Alo Iser's younger sister, Constanze Weber. Many people don't know that many of the female roles in Mozart's operas were specifically written for the Weber sisters. This is because all three sisters had musical talent, but compared to her older sisters, Constanze remained relatively low-key. In many biographies of Mozart, Constanze is often depicted as incapable of managing a household, lacking the intellect to match Mozart's, and only interested in indulging in pleasures. But is that really the case? Consider that Mozart, who grew up in a life of luxury, had very high expectations. It's not difficult to imagine that if you have a husband who spends lavishly, it's hard for someone to manage finances effectively if there's no money to manage, right? The two were married for 9 years and had 6 children, but their life was far from wealthy. After the outbreak of the Austro-Turkish War in 1787, most cultural activities came to a halt, and Mozart fell into significant debt. It was only 2 years later that Constanze realized the scale of the debt. In a decisive move, she sold much of their furniture and secured a loan. She also negotiated Mozart's royalty payments to settle part of the debt, which helped resolve their financial crisis. Afterward, Mozart worked even harder to repay Constanze's support. When we look at this, can we still say that she was incapable of managing a household and only interested in pleasure? That's a grave mistake. As for Mozart's cause of death, many link it to his unfinished work Requiem, and this connection has sparked much speculation. Let's look at how this story is often told. In July 1791, while Mozart was busy working on his opera The Magic Flute, a mysterious man dressed in black visited him. This anonymous visitor requested that Mozart compose a requiem for his recently deceased wife, with a tight deadline. A requiem is a series of choral movements used in the Catholic Church for mass prayers for the dead, specifically in funeral rites. The Catholic belief is that holding a requiem mass for souls in purgatory can shorten their suffering and help them ascend to heaven more quickly. The mysterious man offered Mozart a substantial fee for this commission, paying half in advance as a deposit, with the remaining half due upon completion. Given his ongoing financial struggles, which we mentioned earlier, Mozart could not afford to refuse. Furthermore, his desire to receive the remaining 50% of the payment pushed him to work tirelessly, often day and night. Unfortunately, the strain proved too much for his already weakened health, and he died on December 5, 1791, before completing the Requiem, at the age of just 35. However, the story doesn't end here. In many versions, the anonymous man is depicted as a figure from the underworld, a deathly messenger who, knowing Mozart's time was short, forced him to compose the Requiem for his own purposes. Whether or not this interpretation holds any truth is left to each person's belief. As for the Requiem itself, it's highly recommended to listen to the version conducted by the classical maestro Herbert von Karajan, which captures the depth and power of the piece. Theory 1. Killed by the musician Salieri disguised as the Grim Reaper. This is perhaps the most famous and dramatic theory, popularized by the 1984 film Amadeus, based on the stage play of the same name. According to this narrative, Antonio Salieri, the court composer in Vienna, harbored a complex mix of admiration and jealousy toward Mozart. He admired Mozart's music but resented his genius overshadowing his own. The theory suggests that Salieri, in a fit of envy, disguised himself as the Grim Reaper and tricked Mozart into composing the Requiem by offering him a lucrative commission at a time when Mozart was financially desperate. This psychological and emotional manipulation, along with the strain of the task, supposedly contributed to Mozart's physical and mental collapse, eventually leading to his death. Theory 2. Poisoning. Another theory proposes that Mozart was poisoned. Suspects include Salieri, who is said to have been envious of Mozart's success, Mozart's wife Constanze, who allegedly had an affair and was tired of the financial strain, and even some members of the Freemasons, who were reportedly upset with Mozart's interactions with them. The idea of poisoning has long fascinated biographers and fans, though no concrete evidence has ever been found. There is also the issue of people who maliciously attacked Constanze's character, accusing her of being selfish and unsympathetic in their accounts of their relationship. But how accurate is this depiction? The truth behind the poisoning theory remains unclear. Theory 3. Syphilis. Some scientists have speculated that Mozart may have died from complications related to syphilis. It was known that Mozart lived a somewhat hedonistic lifestyle, and some researchers believe that he may have been suffering from the effects of syphilis, which he may have contracted earlier in his life. This theory suggests that the mercury treatments used to treat syphilis in that time could have contributed to his decline and eventual death. Theory 4. Death by influenza. In 1791, there was a flu outbreak in Vienna. Mozart, who was already in poor health, contracted the flu and developed a high fever. At the time, the most common treatment for such illnesses was bloodletting, a practice that was believed to restore balance to the body. During the course of a week, Mozart underwent 6 to 8 bloodletting sessions, losing as much as 2,000 milliliters of blood. It's possible that the excessive bloodletting weakened his body further, and some believe that an infection from the procedure could have contributed to his death. Theory 5. Vitamin D deficiency. Some scientists have suggested that Mozart's poor health, which included kidney problems, smallpox, typhus, and various other ailments, may have been linked to a vitamin D deficiency. Since Mozart spent much of his time indoors composing, he likely didn't get enough exposure to sunlight, which is necessary for the body to produce vitamin D. The deficiency could have weakened his immune system and made him more susceptible to the illnesses that ultimately contributed to his death. Each of these theories presents a different facet of Mozart's mysterious death, and while we may never know which one is the true cause, they all paint a picture of a man whose life and work were marked by immense talent, struggle, and tragedy. According to later biographies, Mozart's condition before his death was severe. His illness began with swelling in his hands and feet, which became so severe that he could barely move. Vomiting followed, and just 2 hours before his death, he remained conscious. Mozart passed away at 1 a.m. on December 5, 1791. His wife, Constanze, and her family were deeply involved in his care during his final days. Constanze's sister, Sophie, described the scene of his death, saying, "I cannot describe how deeply his wife was grieving. She knelt and prayed to the Almighty for mercy on his soul. She held him in her arms after he passed, and despite my repeated pleas, she refused to leave him." Mozart's funeral was also shrouded in mystery. According to Viennese customs at the time, he was buried on December 7, 1791, in a common grave at the St. Mark's Cemetery on the outskirts of Vienna. Many rumors suggest it was a snowy day, but historical records show that there was no unusual weather on that day. Some have claimed that Mozart was buried in a pauper's grave, but this is a misunderstanding. The burial took place in a common grave, not a public mass grave, and the plot was one for individuals, not for the aristocracy. The truth is that Mozart was buried in a dignified, though simple, manner, in accordance with the norms of the time. In 1801, when space was needed for other burials, Mozart's remains were exhumed, as required by city regulations. In 1989 to 1991, scientists examined a skull and confirmed that it belonged to Mozart, thus revealing the truth behind the mystery. Today, we owe much of our ability to appreciate Mozart's music to his wife, Constanze, who displayed remarkable efficiency and resourcefulness. She organized and published the complete works of Mozart, found a composer to complete his unfinished pieces, and arranged concert tours to perform his music. She remained widowed for nearly 18 years before marrying a Danish diplomat, with whom she co-authored a biography of Mozart. The account of his final moments, as described earlier, was a joint effort between them.